Hey friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, my name is Bianca. A number of founders have asked me for advice on creating compelling pitch decks. So I thought, why not just create a guide that could help more people? If you are in the middle of fundraising or preparing your pitch to investors, well, this video is designed for you. With insights coming straight from a VC's perspective, let's ensure that you can secure that all-important investors meeting. Okay, just a slight disclaimer, everything covered in this video is simply a suggestion. Chances are that you'll probably need to tailor your pitch deck to suit your specific fundraising stage. Well, for example, one startup seed round pitch deck is probably going to be super different from its, well, say pre-IPO stage pitch deck. So in the case of this video, I would say that the tips here may be a little bit more relevant for early stage startups, so say seed or series A, etc. Back to the video. Okay, so in my experience at the very least, I would say that investors are primarily on the lookout for three crucial elements before they are finally convinced to part with their money. So let's just kind of summarize it as three keywords. So TAR, team, attractiveness, and returns. Team, well, as its name suggests, is this team competent and capable? Attractiveness? Well, does the business itself have a really solid foundation as well as a really promising growth potential? Returns? Well, aka, does this investment opportunity promise good returns? In essence, an excellent pitch deck should be able to answer these three questions succinctly as well as convincingly. Doing so would foster investor confidence and thereby increase your chances of finally securing that all-important funding for your business. Now, time to unpack the heart of this guide. How do we construct an effective pitch deck? Try to just think of this as your startup's elevator pitch, or aka like this really insightful, concise snapshot of your entire business venture. To strike a chord with the audience, the key secret sauce here is to essentially weave a compelling story that connects really well with them whilst also maintaining simplicity. Here's how. So the first part of your tale begins with a dragon, or insert any kind of monster that everyone's afraid of, aka a problem that your startup is seeking to slay. Paint this beast as something large, daunting, and impactful. And that's because investors who may or may not be experts in your industry needs to understand, number one, why does your problem matter? And number two, why customers are ready to fork out tons of money to solve that issue? And number three, how many potential customers are even out there? In other words, sell the problem and its market size. Always make sure that you're using credible data or statistics to substantiate your claims. And also, generally speaking, the more urgent the problem is, the more compelling your pitch tends to become. Next, you introduce the hero of your story, the solution. How does your startup plan to slay that dragon? So, describe your solution clearly and concisely with a great focus on your unique value proposition that's going to make customers just reach out for their wallet. The whole point here is to explain how you're not just another knight with a rusty sword, but instead this true hero with this new, unique, and powerful mighty weapon. Next, talk about your business model and strategy. Basically, how do you plan to monetize your solution? So this involves things like describing your revenue stream, your pricing strategy, your sales and distribution model, or even your customer acquisition approach. On top of that, try to just share some insights on your target customer profile as well as your unique approach to addressing their needs. The whole purpose here is really to allow investors to understand how your solution translates into this sustainable and profitable business in the long run. Now, aim to shift your gear here to talk about the kingdom at stake, aka the market opportunity. Investors need to fundamentally understand the scope of the problem that your startup is trying to solve, as well as the size of the market that can effectively benefit from your solution. Show that you understand the market, the competitive landscape, as well as your company's positioning within it. Include data on the market sizes, growth rates, and trends to help investors understand the potential for returns. In case you're operating in a highly regulated industry, take this as a great section to explain any potential regulatory barriers you have considered, as well as your strategies on how you are going to deal with it. After explaining all of that, now it's the time for you to prove your worth as a hero. Share the progress your startup has made since inception. Have you acquired customers, garnered revenue, or even secured really big high-profile partnerships as well as patents? Basically, any evidence of success can help to make your startup appear less risky and more attractive to prospective investors. After that, paint a picture of the empire you aim to build. Where do you see your company in this long yet not so distant future? What milestones do you hope to achieve, and by when? And what are your expansion plans? This ultimately shows investors that you are not just looking to survive, but to also thrive and grow.
Right, just a little bit of a pro tip here. Try to also estimate the market share you think you can capture. That's by studying a few business models or growth rates of similar successful startups operating in maybe other parts of the world. But do take note that it's still probably best to always err on the side of being conservative. Besides that, I reckon it's always useful to know that investors tend to always worry about how they can effectively exit their portfolio companies. So if you can, it's probably not a bad idea to show investors that you've actually thought about it as well. Maybe talk about potential inflection points such as specific milestones where you could start thinking about exiting, or maybe even past transactions in this space. So again, this is all purely optional. Back to the video.
Right, now it is time to rally the troops. This is where you tell investors what you want from them. Specify how much funding you're seeking and what you plan to do with it. Give them this crystal clear understanding on how their capital is going to help you to slay the dragon, grow your kingdom, and ultimately bring them substantial returns on investment. Once that's done, it's now time to review who are the brave warriors. Always bear in mind that investors invest in people as much as their ideas. So do highlight the organizational structure as well as the team's skills, their experiences, as well as successes. Show them how your team's unique abilities make all of you the right people to execute your business plan and ultimately slay that dragon. After that, well, every kingdom has its own treasury, and for your startup, it would be the funds you have gathered thus far. Not to mention, investors always appreciate transparency because it fosters trust. So talk a bit about your fundraising history. Highlight any previous funding rounds, how much capital was raised, and from whom. This is also a good time to outline how your funds have been allocated and the milestones you have achieved as a result of that. It's also good to not shy away from any challenges that you and your team has faced and how you have successfully navigated them. The whole idea here is to show potential investors that you are capable of managing funds in a responsible and strategic manner, turning their investments into tangible progress. Finally, your tale has reached the climax, and this is where you extend your invitation for them to join the round table. This is where you highlight what's unique about your kingdom, i.e. your startup, that sets it apart. Be explicit about what you want from them and how their contributions will expedite your venture journey. Encourage the investors to join you in shaping this promising story.
Right, I might get shot for saying this, but okay. There's no harm to just bear in mind that investors are human as well, so they can be pretty vulnerable to FOMO. With that, it may or may not work in your favor to highlight it in case your startup is undergoing due diligence with other investors. But again, this is simply just a suggestion. Never ever go down the path of fraud. Okay, let's head back.
Moving on, the appendix serves as this chronicles of your kingdom. So take it as a place for you to share your data, your charts, perhaps your customer testimonials, or even any other useful supplementary materials, such as perhaps the ESG opportunities that your startup is able to bring. Also, something that's really helpful from an investor's point of view, if you happen to have a few common questions that you think a lot of people are going to ask, there's no harm preparing a slide or two to just simply address them. But remember, your appendix is basically a reference to, so do not clutter it with any vital information that should have been in the main narrative. And there you have it, a hopefully straightforward guide on how you can construct your pitch deck to deliver this compelling narrative about your startup. To bring this video to an end, I would like to just remind everyone of these two things. Number one, this guide is by no means a one-size-fits-all recipe. The entrepreneurial journey is just as diverse as the people who embark on it. So your pitch deck should reflect your unique vision. Don't be afraid to tweak and refine your pitch deck based on the feedback you've received until you've finally closed your fundraising round. And please remember that your pitch deck is not the only element in the investment decision. The strength of the team, the market conditions, the investor's risk tolerance, or even sector preferences, your pitch delivery, or even the investor's mood on the day itself can all significantly influence the final decision. So just like most of the things in life, recognize what's within your control and what's not, and hopefully learn to be at peace with it. Number two, do not take rejection personally, because investors are human as well. As an investor, I have to admit that we do sometimes overlook fantastic opportunities just because the pitch deck didn't grab our attention, or maybe we just had a bad day. At the end of the day, we're all just critics. In fact, I hope that you have watched the movie Ratatouille before, because there's this quote from the character Anton Ego that I find myself relating a lot to whenever I'm thinking from the mind of an investor. In many ways, the work of a critic is easy. We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and their selves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to read. But the bitter truth we critics must face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticisms designating it so. But there are times when a critic truly risks something, and that is in the discovery and defense of the new. The world is often unkind to new talent, new creations, and the new needs friends. So let's just remind ourselves consistently that as daunting as how this entire entrepreneurial journey can be, you're not alone. Your venture into the new requires advocates, champions who believe in your vision and your story. Securing that VC meeting is going to be tough, but here's to finding allies amongst your future investors. With that, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. If you enjoyed it, I would really appreciate if you could just hit the like, subscribe, and bell icon. And for anyone out there who's giving this whole entrepreneur thing a shot, all the best, you got this, keep pushing forward, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye bye!